It was Henry. Booner pulled off the mask and it was Henry underneath. I didn't even realize the camera had stopped. I was in shock. That's Sarah's writing in my journal. We're back home now. Keep telling the story until I turn the camera on again. The most interesting thing about the look on my dad's face when he realized his best friend was in the dredge at 3:30 a.m. was not the confusion. Sure, he was confused. Who wouldn't be? It was the recognition in his eyes that something was very wrong. It was the hint of an idea that Henry might have put me and Sarah at risk, might have even tried to harm us. The wheels were turning in his head, and I can tell you that. A son knows when his dad is onto something. Booner checked Henry's pulse. He was in bad shape, but he was conscious. His leg was shattered, and I knew how Henry felt and how long it was going to take for him to recover. He was in for a long, painful ride. When Henry glanced at the faces hovering over him in the dredge, he knew he was caught. Dad looked like he was going to kill him. Henry laid there, broken leg and all, and started to deny. But my dad kept shaking his head slowly, saying, "Just tell me the truth for once." And that was it. Henry was ready for it to be over. He was finally ready for all the secrets to come out after 20 long years holding back and the kind of tide that might get very tiring. Henry would say something, and then my dad would fill in the blank, then tell me or Sarah, until all the parts were flying around the dredge, together in one piece at last. Henry was the only person, besides Francis and the Apostle, who ever saw Joe Bush move the lever to reveal the secret room. He discovered the secret room when the dredge was still tearing everything apart and forming Skeleton Creek. Henry was suspected the three men were stealing gold who wouldn't at least try. In fact, making sure gold wasn't being stolen was one of Henry's primary jobs on the frequent visits from New York. There was no way of knowing for sure how much gold should be coming out of the ground, which made it impossible to gauge with any kind of accuracy whether gold was missing. Henry had to sneak up on them, and that's exactly what he did. In the middle of the night, on the scorching hot August 14th, even in pain, even so much later, he remembered the date. Henry got in the lake of water, and the dredge floated in. Swarming over them, pounding noise boarded, dripping wet from head to toe, he watched as old Joe Bush moved the handle that didn't seem to have any purpose. The thing that made me the most angry then, the whole time Henry was talking, this was that it seemed like he never even liked Skeleton Creek or anyone in it. From beginning to end, it had always been an act. This, for me, was an unforgivable deception. He only came back again and again for one reason. You got it, Sarah. Gold. It was only ever about getting his greedy hands on the gold. But finding the secret room was only part of the puzzle. It would take a lot more than that to get what he wanted, because Joe Bush was a really smart guy who loved Skeleton Creek. Henry didn't actually say this. We figured it out this morning. We haven't slept, and Ryan's dad has finally started talking. Yeah, Joe Bush created a layer of secrecy within the organization he founded when the dredge showed up in town, the Crossbones. Its chapter members were the three men who worked with the night shift together in the dredge, Joe Bush, the Apostle, and Francis Palmer. Only those three were aware of the location or even the existence of the secret room. And the three were absolutely sworn to secrecy, and together they recruited Dr. Watts, Gladys Morgans, my dad, and Paul McCary. Dr. Watts and Joe created the formula for the purifying the melting gold. And Dr. Watts never knew anything about the secret room. He was content to do the chemistry with Joe and keep out of the dirty details of stealing gold. Joe gave the combination to the cipher to my dad and Gladys, but no one else. They had no idea what the secret room had been created, or even why, and everyone in the Crossbones was given one primary objective: to save the town from the evil of the dredge. In due time, when Joe was ready, all the members would know every secret, but he knew that would have to wait a long time. At least until the dredge was shut down for good. There was one big problem. Old Joe Bush might have been smart as a whip, but he wasn't impervious to accidents. According to Henry, but then how much can we really trust him? Ultra Bush really did die in an accident. He really did pull into the gears by the cuffs of his pants. His legs were smashed and the gears spit him out into the water. Below, just like the legend says, it happened the night after Henry discovered the secret room. Only Joe knew every important detail, the existence of the secret room he made and where it was, and the combination to unlock the cipher, and the alchemy formula for processing gold, and why he'd secretly done it. Henry went straight to Francis Palmer when he could no longer turn to Joe for answers. He threatened Francis with losing his job, but Francis didn't know anything Henry didn't already know. He knew Joe spent hours and hours in the secret room. He knew where the secret room was, but that was it. So Henry questioned Francis mercilessly, and as he told it, accidentally killed him. The same was true for the apostle. Henry said it was something like this. There were all accidents. I never meant to hurt anyone. I scuffled with Francis up there and he fell, and that was crazy. Apostle, I drunk him in the river and but I didn't drown him. He just slipped out of my hands and drifted downstream into the dark. It wasn't my fault he couldn't swim. As far as Henry was concerned, very little was ever his fault. After the apostle died, the remaining members of the Crossbone fell quiet. For years, Dr. Watson, Gladys, and my dad all went on with their daily lives. Between the three of them, they had no idea a secret room even existed. They only had a hunch there was some gold hidden somewhere in that someone had killed their friends in search of it. Best to leave well enough alone. Years and years, Henry came back searching for clues. He was sure there was a stash of gold hidden somewhere on the mountain. He was convinced the cipher contained the map and would tell him where to look. If only he could unlock it without blowing himself up. No one of Henry's visits seen some kid were sneaking around the dredge and he chased them off. After that, he needed a plan to keep snooping thrill seekers away from the dredge, so he created the Ghost of Ultra Bush. 11 months out of every year in New York gave him plenty of time to figure things out. Even years, he added a few more subtle touches: underground speakers, remote switches for sounds, iridescent mask and hood, invisible tripwires that let him know when someone was heading down the trail towards the dredge. He even had his own secret shortcuts through the seemingly impenetrable fortress of blackberry bushes. Things were different with me and Sarah. Number one, we were persistent. I persisted. What's with we stuff? Like I was saying, we were persistent. But there was one thing that tripped Henry off that I didn't know about until he mentioned it. Sarah had been going to the dredge and filming it for weeks. Before the first video she showed me, she had already been inside, already scouted around for hours. And here's one of the weirdest parts of the whole story. Henry had surveillance cameras set up inside and out the dredge. Not only could he keep an eye on it from his laptop he carried with him, he could also watch it from New York. And watch it he did. Years of watching the dredge turned Henry into quite the technician with this sort of thing. If a person walked past a certain piece of the woods on the way to the dredge, they unknowingly set off alerts all the way out in New York. The best I could understand it, there were pads buried a foot underground, and they were sensitive to pressure. If someone walked on the trail, Henry knew they were coming. And so it was that by the time Henry arrived in Skeleton Creek, he watched Sarah with her camera. He'd seen her visiting the dredge not once, but several times, recording all kinds of things. It worried him enough to put his well-worn scare tactics into high gear when he showed up in Skeleton Creek. Henry was also growing bolder because of all the talk about burning down the dredge. He didn't know who else in the Crossbones, but he was sure there were others. He'd seen little hints here and there from my dad. And there was that one night when I fell asleep at my desk and woke up with the words scribbled on the wall with a pen. I had that list of everyone we discover was in the Crossbones. It was that list that had sent Henry to Dr. Watts when he'd said he was visiting a friend. Henry had excuse for that night too. I didn't mean to kill Dr. Watts. I forced my way in that much is true. And I questioned him. I knew he had answers, but the old loon wouldn't tell me anything. I only swung one time, caught him right in the head. But he made me so mad, all clammed up like that. He was frail more than I realized. I'm sure he died of a heart attack, not a little bump on his head. I guess you could say Henry's confession was tempered with quite a lot of excuses. At least he didn't do much complaining when it came to his own severe injuries. Did you write those words on my wall? I asked him. What words? What are you talking about? Dad asked. He was already mad, but the idea of Henry in my room writing on my walls brought an anger to another level. Henry just looked down at his broken leg and wouldn't answer. He wouldn't bring himself to look at my dad, and I never knew for sure if it had been Henry or not. Finally, Henry was just about to pass out from the pain when we were called to the hospital for an ambulance. I got the camera working again. There's at least one big surprise waiting for us at the dredge, but the part is better seen than said.